Yeah, I mean, first the COVID crisis, then the war in Ukraine, and now this third, yeah, the collapse of the Middle East. Like, these have been three shocks to the supply chain of the global economy, of both goods and information, that we haven't recovered from any of them.
Yeah.
And more importantly, the physical supply chains has not been entertained. Like, they have not been maintained. And the erosion of the physical infrastructure that undergirds our system has been taken for granted for so long that it's on the brink of collapse.
Yeah, it's like a series of bridges which were built 100 years ago with no attention paid at all to maintenance, to upkeep, to repairs. And then now we're also like putting as much heavy stuff as we can on it and seeing if maybe it will last. Maybe it will survive this weight. It probably will, right? But it probably won't actually.
Yeah, like that in combination with the fact that our stuff is getting more technologically advanced, but at the same time much more fragile. And much more expensive.
It's been a minute since we've talked about this. When was the last time we got together for this?
A couple months ago.
Yeah.
It's very as I was saying to you guys yesterday, it's very I don't encounter a lot of texts that are coming from such a place of moral authority, and it's stabilizing. You know, we're on the precipice of. I don't think we're gonna feel it in the West, but we're not gonna feel the sharpest edges the soonest. But
well, I mean, we are looking like we are having elections this fall, and the largest party will be the former Nazi party.
December 29th. That was when we last
posted
a thing.
Think of all that's happened since then.
Yeah, like Venezuela, Iran.
I mean, Jason and Chris can't even keep up when they do the geopolitics episode. It's like, it's just too much.
It's too much.
Yeah, I mean, it's quite insane. And really depressing. Like 2 hours ago, it was a death shooting 100 meters from my entrance to my apartment.
There was what?
Wait, what?
Gang shooting.
Oh, gang shooting.
Wow.
Jeez.
And, well, because Sweden has really, really big problems with criminal gangs. Like, that's not the right-wing myth.
I had no idea.
Yeah, like, it's bad and it's antisocial. Like, these immigrant kids who have grown up in this really brutal, masculine think and rotate with neoliberalism. Like, it isn't cohesive. And then you add a lot of racism and trauma from the refugee experience. It is a perfect mix for disaster.
Yeah.
I guess it's probably, I mean, it's not totally infrequent, but outside your door, is that relatively new?
I mean, I also live in an area which is famous for having a lot of gangs. And I grew up in one of them as well. So, but yeah, death shootings. I mean, if you compare to the USA, we have no problems with gun violence. But like, it's still a lot.
This is going to fit into our human ecology.
Yeah, I mean,
discussion.
okay. So
Ben, are you going to be the? Do you want to introduce us? You want to be the?
Sure.
Sure.
This is now a good time.
Surrogate Chris.
Have you deciphered your cursive?
Yes, more or less.
Okay. Well, in that on that note, welcome to the regrettable century. We are returning to the stabilizing moral document of the encyclical on capitalism and inequality, on care for our common home, also known as Laudato Si, by Pope Francis. And we're going to look at chapter 3 now, and perhaps get to chapter 4. And Mir is joining us from Sweden. And he's going to be our guide.
Yeah, it's great that we're starting chapter 3 on this part 6 episode.
Yeah,
I happened upon this reel on Instagram where this scholar was taking issue with the term Middle East, from a anti-colonial perspective, and she said that she likes to refer to London as the Middle West and the United States as the Far West.
Back when I went in secondary school, the gymnasium, it was quite common to call the Middle East the cradle of civilization, which Africa was the cradle of humanity, and the Middle East was the cradle of civilization.
Yeah, I guess the first thing I want to say is I appreciate that people are thinking about these things, and I also appreciate the literal fact that on a globe, on a planet which is round, no matter what anyone says, it's round. East and West are relative.
Yeah.
China is west of us or east of us, depending on where you're standing and which direction you look. However,
China is the kingdom of the middle.
Right.
If I remember my Chinese characters correctly.
Yeah, but however, the way that we understand the inheritance of global cultures, the West was for centuries thought of in the West rather as the Roman world and everything ancillary to that. So the New World, what's called the New World, the Western Hemisphere, the North America, South America, that's ancillary to the West. And the East is, Persia, China, etc. And you can insist on, well, they're actually the East of us. It's that's literally true, but also that doesn't matter. And it doesn't matter to, all of the billions of people in the world either.
Well, Jason, East, West, left, right, it's all relative.
Exactly.
That's right.
Well, and I think the notion of relativity, to bring us back to chapter 4.
Chapter 3.
Chapter 3. Okay, fair. Okay, then we are going to the human roots of the ecological crisis. And I will also like to add that this will be going a lot faster than a lot of what we've been going through this far. Because what we have done in the previous chapters is basically laying the philosophical and theological groundworks for the problems. So what's coming in the upcoming chapters is today quite commonplace, even in the general discourse, I would say. And it was quite commonplace within the left and the liberal left, 2015 as well, when this, or was it 2014?
It feels like such a long time ago. 2015. That was like
It's 11
300 years ago. Yeah.
2015. So this encyclical is 16 years old. But this chapter basically tries to give a big summary of the technological and ecological developments and what the roots of the ecological crisis are. He starts with the subheading technology, creativity, and powers, with the striking quote that humanity has entered a new era in which our technological power have brought us to a crossroad. And basically what he's arguing in this subheading is that the phenomenon of modernity, of both the fragmentation and collectivization of specialized knowledge, leads to leaps within technology and within our ability to master the natural world, which was previously unthinkable.
Yeah, and I like that he says this what is this? This is in oh, this is really kind of far ahead. It's in 113th
No, you jumped quite far ahead, and I think that's correct. I think we should stay a bit in like the questions of technology, because he also tries to connect the question of technology with the question of power.
I don't mean to jump that far ahead. Sorry about that.
Well, it's okay, because he lays out the reason for why, which is that technology we're in a technological paradigm. We are no longer able as a society, including all of us, like the totality of society, to draw back and see technology as a tool that we can use discreetly and strategically. It is something that rules us. It is something that we are not in control of anymore.
Absolutely.
And we're being driven into the abyss, basically.
Yeah, and this is something that he takes from critics of modernity, from Max Weber to, on the more left side of things, Horkheimer in his critique of technological reason, of instrumental reason. We did a couple of years back a reading series of Zygmunt Bauman. And Zygmunt Bauman wrote a beautiful book called Death and Immortality, if I remember. I think I got that title wrong, but it's a book on the notion of death in modernity. And his argument there is that we are no longer in a modern society able to view death as a phenomenon. We, through the lens of modernity, of technological reason, we always have to find a cause for death. You never die of old age. You die of heart failure, of that specific thing, thing. Because if we can isolate every phenomenon and make them discrete, if we can pull asunder every part of our experience of life, we can put them into discrete pockets, which we then are able to subject to technological reason and therefore solve.
Yeah, I like on that note, going back to like paragraph 105. He says that there is a tendency to believe that every increase in power means an increase in progress itself, an advance in security, usefulness, welfare, and vigor, and so on. But the fact is that we have not been trained to use our power well at all. That power is never considered in terms of responsibility of choice, which is inherent in freedom. He says each age is always tends to not have only a meager awareness of its own limitations, but this age is one in which the limitations far outpace our capacity far outpaces our limitations, and so we might not get the chance to look back one day.
Like, to put it bluntly, the STEM subjects teach you how to create the torture nexus, while the humanities teaches you why it might be a bad idea.
Yeah, that's very well put.
And the problem with technological reason is that it is an episteme which only exists within the STEM subjects, within how we manage certain forms of information and the power that information leads to, not whether it should be managed.
Yeah, we have this what he refers to as the an undifferentiated and one-dimensional technological paradigm. Has we've alienated ourselves from nature, but also from human nature. This is 106. This paradigm exalts the concept of a subject who, using logical and rational procedures, progressively approaches and gains control over an external object. And in this schema, we are making ourselves into an external object.
Yeah.
This subject makes every effort to establish the scientific and experimental method, which in itself is already a technique of possession, mastery, and transformation. It is as if the subject were to find itself in the presence of something formless, completely open to manipulation, which you're getting to, Mir, is like, this is the forum of specialization. And we are dealing with the world as though it can be broken up into areas of specialization. And there are not externalities that reverberate without from our manipulations.
Yes. And
it's like an underlying critique of a mode of being.
Of an epistemological paradigm.
It's kind of like if you were like really concerned about like insects. So then you release a whole bunch of sparrows, and then they killed them off, and that caused an ecological crisis. So then you had to get a bunch of cats to kill the sparrows, because you don't have any conception of how this all works. All you know is what you can do. And so, like in the words of it's funny, I tend to quote this movie a lot accidentally. I haven't seen it in a very long time, but Ian Malcolm in Jurassic Park, he says, "You spent too much time figuring out whether or not you could. You never stopped to think whether or not you should."
Yeah.
Well, it's just an acceleration of a certain kind of logic. And it kind of, I mean, you know that old like folk song? There was an old woman who swallowed a fly. I don't know why she swallowed that fly. Perhaps she'll die. And then it keeps going. She swallows a bird to catch the fly. That's basically the train we're on.
Yeah.
We're swallowing cows now to catch the goat, to catch the, it's just like
goats. Cows are not goat predators.
That's how the song goes. I don't know. But it's the logic. It's self-manifesting.
Mm.
Yeah.
Very much so. And I know that Francis has, in other places, spoken about how this also affects our our way of talking about our own emotions and psychological afflictions like anxiety or sadness. And here his Jesuit training are coming in. That within, and this is super apparent if you ever look at TikTok or mental health YouTube, it is full of tricks about how to deal with, in specific techniques, how to manage sadness, how to manage anxiety, which absolutely can and should be done. It is useful, but it never asks the question, oh, perhaps there is the value to just sitting with your emotions. Like, this is an emotion that is trying to tell me something. And that within an age where everything is going faster and where everything is in an age where we are trying to manage everything as well as our emotions and relationships, we tend to miss the fact that they are a fundamental part of human existence and that they are trying to tell us something, and that we are quite often silencing our own consciousness and awareness of ourselves as individuals when we try to deal with our sadness, with our anxiety through psychological techniques.
Yeah.
And well, after he, because what he does is that he relates this technological paradigm to power very, very much. And he claims correctly that in whose hand does all these power lie, or will it eventually end up? It is extremely risky for a small part of humanity to have it.
Yeah, and I like how explicitly he says that too. Like, our freedom fades when it is handed over to blind forces, and he lists all the different kinds of blind forces. Yeah. But the important point there is, like, we are not completely autonomous. We are interconnected, and when we give up part of what we're supposed to collectively exercise, we give up our freedom.
Yeah. I think today the most poignant example of this is the tech giants.
Yeah, you think about like Peter Thiel, and Sam Altman, and these fucking ghouls talking about like how, we might destroy the world, but also we might also be able
create
to
AI gods.
Yeah, and I just think like, I don't even know how you could stop them.
Yeah,
other than appeals to the heart, and I don't know, these are machine men who don't have hearts, so I just don't know what to do with them.
In my book club, we just finished a novel by Alejo Carpentier, which is set in the Caribbean during the French Revolution. And so there's this exporting of the guillotine. And our good friend Leo was like, so there's a strategy to who you guillotine and who you shoot behind the barracks. And who in our society would we necessarily need to guillotine as a public, collective act of sentencing? And the immediate thought is the CEO of Palantir.
Yeah. These people. Well, and of course, like, George Galloway said this recently. He said, my religion forbids me from saying a lot of what I might otherwise be inclined to say. And I think this is actually a really good check.
Yeah.
Because I don't want to wish harm and violence on these. or pronounce that these are evil people. I don't want to do that.
And yet,
but I want to acknowledge that like this is very difficult.
It's really hard for us to be virtuous people.
Yes, very, very difficult. They're making it way harder than it's supposed to be.
Ghoulish. They are so cartoonishly ghoulish. These people.
Yeah, like these are like Captain Planet bad guys. Like the kind of people like nobody's actually just that bad. Like it's like an old school like James Bond villain. Like
yeah,
you know when they're like they swivel around the chair and they're like, we're going to destroy everything to make terror, and people and they're like, why would you do that? It's like, because terror is chaos and chaos is good. It's like nobody's actually motivated by so little, but apparently yes they are now.
Yeah, like these. I mean, and this is a famous feminist slogan which I like. I always knew that the world was gonna be burned down by mediocre men. I just never understood how fucking stupid they would be.
Yeah, right, exactly. That's very well put.
But like, he goes into more depths into this like concentration of power, because one thing that we often not think about with these technologies, and which he quite clearly points out, and with technologies in general, is that they are owned by specific people.
Right. And on that note, I want to...
And specific groups of people. Like, we are not dealing with Foucault here, where where power is diffused and has no address. No, we know the physical address of the people who own and control these technologies.
Right. And I just want to pause on this passage that Jason glanced over. Our freedom fades when it is handed over to the blind forces of the unconscious, of immediate needs, of self-interest, and of violence. This is sort of the diffuse nature of disempowerment.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So maybe there's like an inversion. This is how power enacts itself, through basically insinuating this self-annihilating principle across the vast populations of the earth. And then the final sentence, in this sense, it says, we stand naked and exposed in the face of our ever-increasing power, lacking the wherewithal to control it. And I would just pause there and say, rephrase it. In this sense, they stand naked and exposed in the face of their ever-increasing power, lacking the wherewithal to control it. And that, for me, lays out clear as day what, the Epstein class is initiating right now in the Middle East. I suppose we is appropriate in the sense that we bear responsibility for them in an ultimate way, but
like one thing that I think made the right wing go so bananas when this encyclical came out is that Pope Francis is quite explicitly telling us that the matter of ecology and technology and the way we live has a power dimension to it, and that power is not equally distributed. He also puts a lot of the faults of our technologies and the way we are managing them in a lack of schooling in responsibility. Like that we need to school people in the notion of how we responsibly undertake the usage of this tremendous power which knowledge and technology has granted us. Should we jump?
What really quickly, what makes the Alex Karp and Peter Thiel and so forth so evil? It's that they have turned humanity into uh, units, into economic units, and into disposable units. They have cut themselves off from the meaning of society, of human ecology. Everything is turned into human beings are turned into fodder in the exact same way that the sort of totalitarian left has been accused of in the 20th century, that they would do anything to masses of individuals if it brought about the realization of communism. It was worth it, and we're being faced with something that doesn't even justify itself by promising an end
Right.
in these monsters.
And I think one of the the Christian notion of sin and evil, one of the words roots for sin is separation. And I think nowhere does this become more clear than in the Catholicism of Tolkien, where the notion of evil is always that of separating yourself from the community.
Right.
And that is what these oligarchs have done. I am no longer part of the community. I am directing it. I am leading it. And to return to, and this is the fundamental Catholic notion of sin, best exemplified by Smeagol's turn to Gollum in the Laudato, if I may be a little bit nerdy, but I think this is a really good pedagogical example, because within that book, The Lord of the Rings, the main sin of Smeagol, and when he turns into Gollum, is not that he murdered his best friend to get the one ring of power who corrupts. That is not what put him beyond redemption. What makes him evil is that after this deed, he leaves his village, he leaves his own kind, and therefore separates himself from the possibility of redemption.
Right. And because up until that point, there was always the possibility.
Yes, and that's why the most severe punishment within the church is excommunication. That by these actions you have cut yourself out of the body of Christ. But within an excommunication, the way that an excommunication works is usually through this action you have cut yourself off, and we are just affirming that. But by stating it, we are also inviting you back through penance and through work. And I think that is a really helpful political way of thinking about evil, that we are calling it out. These tech oligarchs, for example, have consciously cut themselves off from the rest of humanity. And we are affirming, yes, you have done this. We affirm that you have done this, but in the action of affirming that, we can offer you a way back in to the fold if you get your shit together and start acting with common sense and not hanging around on Epstein Island anymore, which both Peter Thiel and Bill Gates and all of these people were, as we all know.
I'm endlessly moved by the story of how the Chinese communists handled the emperor. Right?
Yeah.
He was removed from the halls of power and given a humble position as a gardener. where he remained, where he dutifully remained for the rest of his life. And it was probably, it's an act of penance in a certain sense, but also a way of achieving restoration, um, of being a human being again, right?
Absolutely.
Right. I think that we need to become known for aspiring to set that kind of a model forward, rather than the kind of
Revenge
fantasies that we like. Oh, we'll gulag the people, and like, or this guy, or like, hashtag ice pick, whatever your violent fantasy is about how you take out your enemy. Those there, it's not helpful
No.
for anybody who's not already on your side, and B, it's not good for you.
Yeah,
it's corrupting.
And I think it's linked to, speaking of separation, a lot of like online revolutionaries, who are basically asceticizing distant revolutionary movements and acts in history. There's something I would caution that. I would caution the sort of certainly nihilistic, but just aestheticization of the revolution. There's something about the people who take part in revolutions and great upheavals make imponderable sacrifices. They commit themselves to things that are not so easily aestheticizable, and we need to keep that in mind. That doesn't mean we cease to evaluate them, but I just think there's this strange attachment that kind of redounds our separation from being in a revolutionary milieu.
Absolutely. I think we could jump onto the second section of this chapter with that beautiful summary, or not summary, but plea.
Yeah, and always with the caveat that, like, once you listen to us talk about this and summarize it, you should go back and read it.
Yeah.
We're glossing over lots, and it's all really, really well written, really beautiful, really heavy, and worth your time.
Yeah.
It's all very clearly composed, but that doesn't mean it's something that can be glossed over.
No.
Right.
The second heading of this chapter is the globalization of the technocratic paradigm. And I love the way that he is like always starting at an individual level. It is as if the subject were to find itself in a presence of something formless, completely open to manipulation. That is the way that Francis think that we are relating to the world within this technocratic paradigm. And like anyone, since this is a leftist podcast, anyone who has ever read Adorno recognizes this critique of modernity very, very clearly.
I wonder about that. I think, obviously, first of all, yes, I agree with you. I think it's even kind of obvious. But what's not obvious to me is how widely Adorno is read and understood today. I remember a time when I could bump into a stranger and say, like on a campus or something, and I could presume, another left-wing person, whatever, I could presume they would know Adorno. I don't know if that's true today.
No.
Well, he was in vogue. I feel like the Frankfurt School is less in vogue than it was 10 years ago.
Yeah.
And I feel like that has to do with how the world is changing so rapidly. Because the Frankfurt School is like, they were basically diagnosticians of the, second half of the 20th century, and they were sort of a way to metabolize all these contradictions involved in the Cold War, and they were they also kind of were a bridge to postmodernity, postmodern critique. And reading this encyclical, I can't help but think, oh well, postmodernity is really just taking things to the logical, taking modernity to its logical conclusion, because all of the basically breaking the totality of life into all of these specialized areas and seeing them as no longer interrelated is occurring with the dawn of modernity, and it's just like accelerating until you reach this point of things ceasing to the arguments of the modernists ceasing to hold weight.
Well, yeah. I think for me, I think there are two reasons why the Frankfurt Schools are not read as widely today. One, they are hard to read. I mean, and we live in an age, and now I'm going to sound like an old man yelling at the clouds, but as our comrade Barn often points out, we live in an age of rapid cognitive decline.
Yeah.
Due to social media, due to malnourishment within the West. I mean, in universities, well, in secondary school, we used to teach second and third languages. When you enter into university today, you are teaching the students English so that they might be able to write an essay. I mean, the fact that the Frankfurt Schools are really hard, I think, is one of the reasons. Another reason is that they are quite black-pilled. I mean, one of the big problems with the Frankfurt Schools is that the negative dialectics, which they point out with this fragmentation and instrumentalization, leads to a barbarian iron cage, which basically is impossible to break out of. And in an age as ours, where things are happening so rapidly, so fast, and our problems are so acute, the war in Iran, the genocide in Gaza, the ecological crisis, the erosion of democracy of even the limited democratic institutions within the US, within the UK, within Europe. Those analysis which doesn't open up path for action and path for hope isn't seen as that helpful. I think one clearly material reason that it's hard to read for students today, but also the fact that it doesn't open up spaces for positive engagement, which I think we really need.
They're the other kind of pessimists.
Yeah.
We're the optimistic pessimists.
Exactly. And I would say that also for Francis is that, and this relates exactly to what I was speaking about in paragraph 107. He claims that decisions which are made purely instrumental are in reality decisions about what kind of society we want to build.
Right. I mean, that also that kind of gets at the Ben, what you were joking about a little bit. It's like, I wouldn't say we're optimistic. I'm saying we're hopeful. The kind of society we want to build. I hope that we can redirect. But I'm not optimistic about where we're going. I'm hopeful that we can go in a different direction entirely. Grasp, hold again, and recognize our capacity to, make decisions. Take freedom in a more genuine way. To recognize that there's much to be pessimistic about. That doesn't mean that there's any reason to be any less hopeful.
And like he later really like pushes this point forward. We fail to see the deep roots of our present failures, which have to do with the direction, goal, meaning, and social implications of technology and economical growth. The specialization which belongs to technology makes it difficult for us to see the larger picture. What he's calling for here is for us to engage with the world anew. That the way we are viewing the world through technology as discrete pockets of discrete phenomena makes it impossible for us to act in it and paralyzes us. That there is a paralyzing function within modernity that makes us take the present for granted, and also makes it impossible for us to see the present that we're taking for granted in full. And he later claims, this is a brilliant quotation from him, ecological culture cannot be reduced to a series of urgent and partial responses to immediate problems.
Yeah, I actually thought that paragraph is one of the most gripping, most powerful.
Yeah, should read it in full.
Go ahead. It is
111.
Exactly.
Ecological culture cannot be reduced to a series of urgent and partial responses to the immediate problems of pollution, environmental decay, and the depletion of natural resources, which is the only way we look at anything, and we fail even in that. There needs to be a distinctive way of looking at things, a way of thinking, policies, an educational program, a lifestyle, and a spirituality which together generate resistance to the assault of the technocratic paradigm.
Very much so.
What's funny is that's actually not the one I was thinking of.
Oh, what were you thinking of?
I mean, that's a good one too. But it's like when I heard it, I was like, okay, it's valuable, it's important writing, but like, I don't know if that's the most gripping. But whatever the whole thing is. I was actually thinking of paragraph 113. That's the one about that I mentioned before about how people. There's also the fact that people no longer seem to believe in a happy future. They no longer have blind trust in a better tomorrow, based on the present state of the world and our technical abilities. There is a growing awareness that scientific and technological progress cannot be equated with the progress of humanity and history. A growing sense that the way to a better future lies elsewhere. This is not to reject the possibilities which technology continues to offer us, but humanity has changed profoundly, and the accumulation of constant novelties exalts a superficiality which pulls us in one direction. It becomes difficult to pause and recover a depth of life. If architecture reflects the spirit of an age, our megastructures and drab apartment blocks express the spirit of globalized technology, where a constant flood of new projects coexists with a tedious monotony.
Well, and I mean, Francis really saw this development during his life in a way that, I mean, I think we three all have, because none of us are super young anymore. But uh, but like take Martin Luther King could unironically say that the arc of history tends towards justice.
Yeah, it's funny because I sometimes make a reference to that in that generation's optimism about the, if you, let's say that you were a young person and you were like I don't know, maybe you could be like an IWW type because you were picking apples in the orchards in California in like during the Dust Bowl. You get a little bit older, and now you go off to fight a world war, and you recognize your enemy as Hitler. So you think you're doing something good, but also the world might end. Then you get back and you get the GI Bill, and you get some money, you buy a house. But also, there's still so much more to do, and so then you feel you put a lot of yourself into the civil rights movement. And you could feel like, just looking back in my lifetime, the world has gotten so much better. Even though we have massive challenges, we keep overcoming them. Because, the arc of history bends towards justice. That's true. You can see it. That's not the case now.
No.
If you're born in the mid-'80s like me, all you have seen is something between stagnation and regression.
Well, I think that's a bit unfair. I would put
even as I said that, I was like, you know what? I would probably I should rephrase that. But yeah,
like, because this is something that I've been thinking about a lot lately. For me, the cutoff point is like 2013, 14, 15, or around there.
I would actually put it a little bit earlier than you, but later than what I put. I would say 2000.
Well, I mean,
I would say that this century thus far has been, I don't know, it's been very regrettable.
Oh yeah, absolutely, it has been, but in objective terms. But my arguments would be that when I was in secondary school and the university, there was really this. It was still this sense of the hopefulness of the early Obama years.
Sure.
Of progress within the questions of equality between the sexes. We were pointing out and actually believing that inequalities within human relationships between the genders, within questions of homosexuality, ecology could be fixed. It was just a matter if you wanted to be on the right or wrong side of history. Then, basically around 2013 to 16, my generation, basically, and those a bit younger, who had grown up on the Obama and Bush years, dream of colorblindness, and that every girl could become a president. Every immigrant could become a CEO if you just worked hard enough.
Kamala's going to run again, we all know.
During the Obama years, basically, at the end of them, we realized that, now we're coming up against reality and facing a lot of racism and sexism, and we are demanding that birthright which was promised to us in this liberal project.
Yeah, I guess that's true. The even though past generations had like the Depression and the war, or else the crusade against communism, or like the space race, whatever it was, they had some great cause that kind of generally you could pick a side, you can march in the direction of the completion of the fulfillment of your cause. And then I don't know that the 91 and for about a generation, the end of history and the feeling that like, now we just have to tinker with things. Like you said, now we'll have a woman president and those kinds of things. I guess yes, there was still some vague hopes in there.
Yeah.
Well,
I think in an objective sense.
Oh yeah.
But I see what you mean though. Yeah. And then what did you say? Who's running? What
I
was
was
that?
just saying when Mir was waxing poetic on the legacies of the Obama era that Kamala is going to run again. I think.
Oh yeah.
Speaking of the hubris, it's just incredible. So
I'd rather see Kamala than Pete Buttigieg, actually.
Yeah, I don't know. So yes, our generation and especially those younger than us even have not this premise of things getting better has not been the case for a couple of decades.
Well, I would say for a decade and a half, our hopes has been constantly crushed. Before that, it was the idea of racial and gender progress. Then with the backslash when our generations through the woke movement started, hey, we were promised some things that never came true, which was basically the project of the woke movement. 2015, Black Lives Matter, Arnita Sarkeesian within feminism, and so on.
All of that had there was a neoliberal argument for what was possible, what could be demanded of this economic system socially within it. And there's this passage in 109, going back a bit. It reads, some circles maintain that the current economics and technology will solve all environmental, and we can insert social, problems, and argue in popular and non-technical terms that the problems of global hunger and poverty will be resolved simply by market growth.
Yeah.
They are less concerned with certain economic theories which today scarcely anybody dares defend than with their actual operation and the functioning of the economy. This is the change, I think. Yeah. The promise of what can be achieved under the neoliberal order has been disproven in front of the whole world. And so the arguments, the partisans for why we should proceed with this so that we can achieve, equity and racial liberation and so forth, they kind of have resided. They're not quite as loud as during the end of history and in the late 90s. There's it reads, they may not affirm such theories with words, but nonetheless support them with their deeds by showing no interest in more balanced levels of production, a better distribution of wealth, concern for the environment and the rights of future generations. So the logic continues. It cannot be magically made into a set once again with all of the aspirations that were promised. And I don't know, maybe I'm wrong about that, but it just seems like that recognition is why everyone is so demoralized.
Yeah, we have a generation in Gen Z and Gen Alpha, which I've been working a lot with, that has never even experienced the quite feeble hopes of the Obama years, which were quite anemic historically seen.
They were marginal.
Yes. And they were okay, we can have a black president and black people can become CEOs. It wasn't talk about the end of poverty or the fact that everyone should have a middle class life, but it was a promise that everyone could achieve middle class life if they worked hard. Today, no one even believes that. Every Gen Z or Gen Alpha that I talk to are quite like it is not only that they don't that they know that they will have it significantly worse than their parents. It is the fact that they never have had the illusion that things could get better. That is quite heartbreaking. And I think this foreclosure of hope, this foreclosure of the future, I mean, he doesn't go in very much into that just in a paragraph. I think that also has to do with the fact that, and this is nothing against Pope Francis, but like he belongs to a generation which have not experienced this type of hopelessness in formative years.
Yeah, I think that I wonder about let's say I wonder how many 17-year-olds might read, assuming that there are any who will read this this encyclical. But I wonder how many 17-year-olds might read it and then be like, yes, this is what we need, this is what we're missing. Like how deaf are the ears that this would fall?
What I'm afraid of, and what I'm seeing a lot within the Catholic Church, is that, like, I mean, that the mere idea of hope and responsibility within the political and social sphere are seen as pipe dreams. That and like most of the young Catholics which I meet would agree with, like, yeah, this is ethically true and spiritually true, but Pope Francis was a bit of a Panglossian.
He was a utopian.
Yeah, character. Like we all know that every person within public life is a person like Nancy Pelosi, who's only enriching herself through stock trades, or Trump, who is utterly corrupt. And that, like, that the mere idea of positive change has almost become impossible to imagine, because we have resigned our demands of virtue from all parts of the public sphere, in a way that I don't believe were true before, actually. I think that's a genuinely new phenomenon. We always knew that our politicians were somewhat corrupt, but not to this extent.
Yeah, I think this total mask off moment, I think it's hitting everybody. It basically is serving as a shock, even if you let's say you knew better. It doesn't really matter, because you got very used to what you knew. And
like, as
surprising. Yeah. I mean, I remember about it in the couple days, whatever, right before the election. I remember saying, it didn't matter. It's going to be the same as it always has been. We've already had a Trump 1. Trump 2 is not going to be that much different. I was wrong.
we were
I'm
also
prepared to say that I was wrong.
I've been preparing to say that I'm going to answer for all of us, and of course this is retrospective, so take that with a grain of salt. But I dare to say it was wrong to say that Trump was the lesser evil with regard to the war, because the however heinous and bloodthirsty a Clintonite Democrat might have been, they weren't going to destroy the global economic order at the behest of, like, Third Temple
Zionism.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, that's fair. If anything,
as incompetent doing it.
Yeah,
right. If there is a future in which, if later on, if we'll be able to see. Yeah, if there's a future, if later on we can see that it is the case that what's a good way to put this? Okay, so obviously, in the short term, in the immediate, maybe even in our lifetimes, this is going to feel very, very much like, oh yeah, Donald Trump actually was the greater evil. But also, the United States is no longer occupying Iraq. The U.S. military is pulled out of Iraq. They've been there since 2003, and now they're out. And so it depends on your point of view and your perspective.
Yeah.
Obviously, I'm not going to, sit in a southern city and look at ICE raids and say, "Oh, yeah, that's all fine," because this ruptural moment that has to happen. It's terrible. It's awful. But if I was an Iraqi,
sure,
I'd say, "Oh, hey, look, it's finally over. We're finally free again."
We're just in no position to.
I just mean that, like the Owl of Minerva, that thing I always say.
Yeah. I would say
you could look back on, with hindsight, things look a lot different. Right now, though, obviously, yes, it's terrible. I would never want to seem so heartless as to say it's got to be this way. Well, it doesn't have to be this way.
I just think it's too soon to prognosticate on how costly the rupture will be.
Yeah.
So long as Israel has nuclear weapons.
So long as Israel continues to exist.
And also,
yes,
and not to mention the famines which are already breaking out in Sri Lanka, in Indonesia, in Taiwan, in Thailand, because of the energy crisis, because of so many people who are dependent on fishing, due to the spike in oil prices. We really can't imagine how bad things are. But I would like to return to the notion of hopelessness and rapture in hopelessness. I think we should use Zizek here. We always knew that the politicians were somewhat corrupt. Clinton, Bush, Obama, Biden, we knew that, of course.
Yeah.
But we acted as if they had our best interest at heart.
Yeah, it's like when Mark Carney said, "Well, we always knew the global rules-based order was kind of a fiction."
Yeah.
I was like, no, dude, we always knew that. You seemed to think it was not a fiction.
Well, and I think...
No, he was admitting to being an actor in the fiction.
Yeah. Well, yeah, that's what I mean.
Yeah. And I think what's happened now is that we do no longer act as if.
Yes. And they don't either.
No, exactly. So this pretense has fallen off. The famous Lacanian joke about the madman who went to an asylum. He thought he was a grain of corn, and then he got cured and went outside, and then came running back. It was a chicken there. You know that you ain't the great anymore. Yes, that is true. But does the chicken know that? And I think we are living in such a moment now. The thin veil between what we know and how we are acting are disappearing.
Also, based upon how. So there's this sort of wing of realists, and that encompasses figures like Mearsheimer and so forth, who are basically looking at what is actually going on between big power players. But then there's a weird fake news version of realists that's running our foreign policy. It's pretending to be realist, looking after the interests of the American nationalism, and yet it's cosplaying with billions and billions of dollars.
It's a dorm room version of
realism.
Exactly.
Yeah.
or not even a dorm room, but like more high school debate club version of realism.
Yeah.
Well,
it costs money to kill bad guys. That's what Hegseth said.
That's true. Hey, so
we're not going to make it to chapter 4.
Yeah, real quick. There are two things. One of them is that there's a 0% chance that we're going to make it to chapter 4 because we have a.
But we can become ready with this chapter. I think
that's true. And the other thing is, I'm going to try to not do it, but I also might have to pause and just step out for like 10, 15 minutes. And if that happens, just keep going and I'll come back and just I'll hit my unmute and say, yeah, as if I had been listening this whole time.
Okay, sure.
I'll also leave and Nir can just record.
I'll continue to wax on poetically in my broken English.
Well, then you could just do impressions of Ben, impressions of me, and then you could like do a debate and you could like moderate between the two.
Well, I mean,
go for it, Jason.
Let's move forward to the third subchapter of
the crisis and effects of modern anthropocentrism.
Yes.
And I thought this one was really great.
Yeah, and here I love this quote from Romano Guardini, which is a really important, beautiful German theologian and mystic, and he wrote in a really good book, which is named "The End of the Modern World." The technological mind see nature as an incessant order, as a cold body of facts, as a mere given, as an object of utility, as raw material to be hammered into useful shapes. It views the cosmos similarly as a mere space into which objects can be thrown with complete indifference.
Yeah.
See, so that passage makes me think about more than just the disposability logic inherent in a profit-centered mode of production.
Yeah.
That also reminds me of a lot of the productivist ethos coming out of the some of the best that humanity has put forward in the last century when it comes to like the early Soviet Union, and the way that people like Preobrazhensky and Trotsky and in later generations as well, when they talk about
the social democracy in Scandinavia, very much had this ethos, and also
like to me this
Kautsky,
this technological mind that is that he's talking about here is more than just a capitalist problem. This is a problem of modernity. This is one of the inheritances of the modern age, that we think we have boundless capacity, infinite capacity, and that socialism has largely, thought if we could just harness it. And I know anybody who's a serious, whatever, a long-time listener will have heard us visiting the works of like people like William Morris, and or even going as far back as our earliest days. We talk about the kind of neo-romanticism of a certain kind of socialist thinking that can say to be it's still informed by the logic of a Marxist philosophical framework. I think that the urgency, the necessity of that kind of thinking is more urgent now than ever.
Yeah.
And I appreciate so much. I appreciate this this encyclical, not just because it's written by Pope Francis, not just because I'm a Catholic, but also because my socialism has increasingly become the kind of if we were gonna on a scale, I would say it's very heavily tilted toward concerns for the natural world and for the human beings that live here, and basically no concern for productivity and technological sophistication and leisure and all those other things.
Yeah, very much so. And like Pope Francis contrast Romano Guardini's Italian priest who lived in Germany for most of his life. He was very important for Benedict XVI as well. In the early 20th century, like I think he died before the Nazis came to power. So very prescient. But Pope Francis contrasts this hegemonic notion of modernity towards the Catholic ones instead. Instead, our domination over the universe should be understood more properly in the sense of responsible stewardship. And what does that mean in practice? Instead of controlling, fixing, and cutting the natural world and our relationships up into small manageable pieces, we don't have to give up control, but we can, instead of treating our given world as a cutting board, more as a garden, or no, garden is wrong, more as a river which we can guide away from our building. And like this notion of stewardship instead of control is fundamental for Pope Francis throughout this encyclical.
He also draws attention, this is actually on 112, but on how we are already at the margins. There are already instances of doing this, what needs to be done at scale. That there is already a, how does he put it? At certain local levels, an authentic humanity, which he says is calling for a new synthesis and seems to dwell in the midst of our technological culture, almost unnoticed, like a mist seeping gently beneath a closed door. We already have alternatives in play, sometimes coming from very impoverished regions and communities, showing us a better way that can be invested in and reproduced elsewhere.
Very much so. And like he does multiple times within this encyclical, draws upon his more politically conservative predecessor Benedict XVI, which is brilliant. He in his own right.
I like how he does that, and also with John Paul.
Yeah, absolutely. Because one of Benedict XVI's preoccupations was how modernity leads to moral relativism.
Right.
And Pope Francis argues time upon time again that like the notion of productivity and progress is per definition more morally relativistic, because it does not envision a notion of virtue, of the good life, of relationship with God and nature as a goal. progress such as it is envisioned today does not have a moral core, or it is instead progress for progress' sake, growth for growth's sake, economic growth for growth's sake. The Labour government under Keir Starmer have had its only stated political goal has been to accelerate the economical growth of Great Britain, not for the sake of doing other things, but for the own sake of growth. And the only system which grows for its own sake is cancer.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah, even the pretense of having a rising tide which lifts all boats, even that seems very passé now. That's like Tony Blair era monsters that would at least pretend to have this vision that like we'll all do better. But like today, it's not just that the progress lacks this kind of vision, lacks a moral core. It's almost like
it doesn't even
it lacks a moral feature.
Yeah.
Period.
It doesn't even pretend to have a moral.
Yeah.
Yeah, like take Blair, Mandelson, and Clinton when they were hanging out at Epstein Island, which they all did. They would, surrounded by minors, come up with spins about how they would spin neoliberalism into moral core. Keir Starmer doesn't even pretend.
Yeah.
And I do actually think that Keir Starmer is a more decent person than Tony Blair ever was. That isn't that hard, but
it's really not hard at all.
No, it's really not hard at all. Like there are. I wish I could say that there are a few people who were so rotten to the core as Tony Blair, but that's not true. It's just there are many people who are as rotten to the core as Tony Blair. Most of them were his friends.
Yeah,
right.
But like the fact that we don't even pretend to have a moral core, that the masks have so completely fallen off. I think that is something that Francis really couldn't have foreseen when he wrote this. Like, because he wrote this during the Obama years.
Right.
Yeah, the culture of relativism is... On 123, he says, the culture of relativism is the same disorder which drives one person to take advantage of another, to treat others as mere objects, imposing forced labor on them or enslaving them to pay their debts. The same kind of thinking leads to the sexual exploitation of children and abandonment of the elderly when they no longer serve our interests. And it's so... well, I mean, obviously, you think of what you just alluded to on Epstein Island, when they're literally using children as sexual objects and hatching plans to kind of do that same act on a vast scale to the
populations
of the countries that they run. Not to diminish child sexual assault, but there's kind of a link between the way they treat individual human beings and these girls and women and the way they approach governance.
Yeah, like this is the classical traditionalist or conservative argument that when you start that one of the fundamental wrongs in liberal society is that it treats people as means instead of ends, and that is inherent in our economical system, and that is something that like old-fashioned conservatives and old-fashioned leftists actually agree on. With our common enemy, the liberal virus.
Yeah.
Well, communists don't want to, like, the goal is to conserve life.
Yeah.
The goal is to, like, there, yeah, in the basic definitional sense, there is a conservative ethos to communism. It is not seeking to drive us over a cliff in the Benjaminian sense. At least not the kind that has led to the great, party membership in the communist parties across the world. That's not what drives people to join these movements, to drive the train
Right.
over the cliff.
Well,
No, it's very much to.
I've met people who have joined communist parties for those sort of reasons. Like they do exist.
Yeah, sure, but I think most people very much want to apply the brake.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, but I mean, accelerationism was a real problem in the left. Not anymore, but like it wasn't so many years ago that it was a real tendency.
Well, actually, this gets us back to what we were sort of saying. It's yet to be determined what the products of this ruptural moment will be, right? And that's why you can't really presume to know what accelerationism will entail. Just in the same way as you can't presume to know what a multipolar world will entail, like you and Jason and Chris were discussing most recently. It's an opening for something new. That's basically all you can presume. And what that will be, so it's important not to be kind of celebrating in advance. Mere openings.
Exactly. Well, right, because we have already had the lesson of first Hitler, then our turn. It's like, yeah, but between the Hitler and your turn is,
a genocide.
Yeah.
Yep.
Well, I mean, so like Francis goes into the culture of relativism, and much could be said about that. He then tries to present a couple of antidotes, which I think it is worth talking a bit about. And one of them is the need to protect
Employment.
And I find this passage so. I mean, we really need proper unions, and we need Catholic unions again. And they could just put this on leaflets and hand it out. According to the biblical account of creation, God placed man and woman in the garden of he created, not only to preserve it, but to make it fruitful. Laborers and craftsmen, those maintain the fabric of the world.
Yeah, that line I highlighted.
Developing the created world is a prudent way, in the best way of caring for it. As this means that we ourselves become instruments used by God to bring out the potential which He Himself has inscribed in things.
Yeah.
I mean, that is one of the most beautiful defense of the dignity of workers.
Yeah. Yeah, laborers and craftsmen maintain the fabric of the world. It's true in so many valences.
And I think that is a place where both liberals and leftists fail utterly. We are no longer, and I think that's because the dignity of labor has fallen so low. Also, like, it's really hard to maintain the dignity of labor when the conditions of labor all around the world are so abhorrent. Like in the West as well. Not just in a purely material means, but like in a spiritual means. Before the financial crisis that came with COVID and the affordability crisis that came with it, we saw a large portion of skilled labor, white-collared labor, which previously had been quite unalienated, such as teachers, social workers, jurists, professionals, leave the white-collar classes and actively search for work in blue-collar jobs, due to the fact that the white-collar workers had been so degraded and controlled. You did now, within social work, you do no longer have a notion of discretion. Like you are reduced to being a cog in a machine.
Right.
And I had a long time when I stopped working as a social worker for that very reason. Like I couldn't find any form of dignity and meaning in the nightmarish bureaucratic hellscape that the welfare state in Sweden have become. So I went to work as a barista.
Right.
Actually, like I lost 2/3 of my wage, and I was so much happier. And I have other friends which have done the same thing. When I talk to a lot of my academic friends, a lot of them mourn the fact that it didn't become craftsmen, so electricians, that sort of stuff, because there is a dignity there. It's still very hard. I don't want to romanticize those jobs because they are brutal, especially within the neoliberal paradigm. But you can still find pride in them in a way that's becoming increasingly hard within the more controlled bureaucratic systems of professionalism.
I want to read from the next paragraph, Mir, just because I think it's getting at the deeper sort of what underlies the economic value of work. And this is 125. If we reflect on the proper relationship between human beings and the world around us, we see the need for a correct understanding of work. If we talk about the relationship between human beings and things, the question arises as to the meaning and purpose of all human activity. This has to do not only with manual or agricultural labor, but with any activity involving a modification of existing reality, from producing a social report to the design of a technological development. And this is the key line. Underlying every form of work is a concept of the relationship which we can and must have with what is other than ourselves. And I just feel like that really that's the epicenter of what work is relationship.
Yeah, work is a relationship to the creation. If you work within human services or as a teacher, or a social worker, you work with other human beings that are created in God's image. Most other works should ideally be in relationship with the created world and as a mean to fulfill God's plan in the creation. He later writes, "We were created better with a vocation to work. The goal should not be that our technological process increasingly replace human work, for that would be detrimental to humanity. Work is a necessity, part of the meaning of life on this earth. a path to growth, to human development, and personal fulfillment. Helping the poor financially must always be a provisional solution in the face of pressing needs. The broader objective should always be to allow them a a dignified life through work. And like the and I think this is what makes basic income so pernicious and
Yeah.
dangerous, because it work is a way to put us in relationship and give us collective control and stewardship over the world. If you remove large portions of the populations from the stewardship of the world, which is what work is. Work is the way for human collectively to make the world into something beautiful. If
Yes.
if if we remove a large portion of those worlds, the power to recreate the world does still exist, but it becomes limited to a small elite.
That's my my fundamental quibble disagreement with the fully automated luxury communism people and the universal basic income. Let's call it fantasy aspiration on the part of a whole bunch of hell, maybe even the majority of the socialists, the left, whatever today, and they say that the answer to the world as it's shaping up to be happens to be more or less the same answer that Elon Musk says. It's like, well, hey, we'll reduce the work week by down to like 10 hours and 5 hours, and then we'll have all this free time. And I just think that's like, it sounds so soulless, so empty.
Well, I mean, I'm not opposed to reducing the working day to like 4 or 5 hours. Like that would probably
Well, sure.
that
I think
that would probably be very good. But like the problem is that when we speak in those terms, we also give up on the notion that work can and should become a natural part of life. That work should not be an alienating experience. Like the notion of work should be the locus of political struggle.
Yeah.
We need to be able to talk about the dignity of work, to be able to emancipate work to what it's meant to be.
Actually, Jason, I'm just thinking about it. It almost, I mean, the cartoonish. There is a cartoon example of a fully automated luxury communism, and that's the film WALL-E, right?
yeah.
But even in a sort of less cartoonish version, I feel like there's this strange assumption that liberation from the requirement to labor in the same way, what it will allow us to do, what this misinterpretation of what Marx said, that you can be a fisherman in the afternoon and a poet after that, or whatever, is that we are somehow liberated from being in relationship with one another, that we can actually become even more autonomous from the social stream of relationships. And I think that's this argument in the encyclical is saying, no, we are fundamentally in relationship with one another. And work,
right, that it's actually at the core of our being,
the core of our being and our ability to construct meaning and value and experience joy and all of that stuff. But also, if we cease to be doing that, we are not liberating ourselves. However, good or bad the experience may feel. And work is actually something that allows us freedom, in that it gives us control. It gives us a sense of empowerment to cooperate with one another.
And also to skill ourselves and make ourselves better. I
Yeah.
mean, this is why, perhaps not Marx, but at least the Second International Marxists like Karl Kautsky, Bernstein, Rosa Luxemburg believed that the working class was the subject of history. The fact that a large portion of the population had become so skilled that they could take care of society's needs. What they couldn't envision was that with the unregulated cancer of technological progress, we would see a rapid de-skilling of the workforce and fragmentation of the workforce, which makes that second international version of work impossible. But like that was why the working class was seen as such a powerful subject, that these are people who have been disciplined through labor and skilled through labor to be able to recreate the world in their own image. Today, we are seeing a rapid de-skilling. And I think that was very much a conscious choice within neoliberalism to break up new market forces instead of making of repairing our old clothes. We are encouraged to buy throwaway clothes instead of sewing or repairing our old refrigerators or fixing our computer. We are encouraged to treat all of our possessions as subscription models, because that creates new forms of revenue, but it also makes us dependent upon the system, and also quite helpless. Like the old notion of self-reliant workers have disappeared, unfortunately.
Yeah, that's why I really like here that Pope Francis is talking about the need to protect employment and not the need to make sure everyone's provided for, although that is also a need. But in this particular case, this is about protecting employment. Dude, it's okay. So we're 2 hours in, and we have
I don't think I don't have that many.
At least 10 more paragraphs to go.
I don't have that many notes on the notion of biological on the last section, which we got the new biological technologies. His point here could be, yes, it is good, but we should treat it with responsibility and caution.
Yeah.
Basically, he treats science, the STEM sciences, as a vocation. If an artist cannot be stopped from using his or her creativity, neither should those who possess particular gifts for the advancements of science and technology be prevented from using their God-given talents for the service of others. We need to constantly rethink the goals, effects, overall context, and ethical limitations of human activity, which is a form of power involving considerable risk. And what he's pointing out there is that, yes, science, technology, and knowledge is a God-given power, but it is a power that needs to be put into relationship with humanity and society as a whole, because otherwise it runs amok.
Yeah, and I think that's just demonstrably true on the face of it.
Yeah.
Like that's just true.
Do you guys have any notes on this?
No, it's just kind of more being more specific on sort of how technology in this sense, the biological technologies um, are of great value to human need, but that they can be a runaway train and they have an inner logic that can be anti-humanist. And this is also where some of the sort of more socially conservative um, Catholic belief in sort of embryonic scientific exploration are named as sort of something that's left out or not incorporated into more progressive criticisms of biotechnology, which is of note that there are like tensions because oftentimes we're kind of reading this document. It's like as uh, all three of us people who are receptive to its spiritual implications, but also reading it on behalf of a secular audience. And it's interesting when there's something that's very clearly laid out as, oh, well, this is actually a divergence for some readers.
Yeah, absolutely. And that goes back to like the episteme that like you are not allowed to treat human beings and or the created world as an open dead object that are subject to our indifferent manipulations. Like that is something truly dangerous. Uh, if we don't have anything more to say on that specifically, a quick recap. Like the main structure of this chapter has been to point out that the roots of our ecological crisis is within the episteme of the technocratic notion that each part of our human experience and the natural world can be separated into different fragments which are dead and open to manipulations. That is the the episteme of of modernity, and it comes to quite demonic consequences with when the profit motive of neoliberalism is added on top of that, because technology is always related to power. Technology and information is put in the hand of those who have resources to enact it.
Those who own the means of production.
Yes, and what we need to do is to put ourselves in relationship with each other and with the world, in order to bring that has been torn asunder together. And in this sense, work and the dignity of human labor has a specific role to play. Because the dignity of labor and the worker and the craftsman is in the fact that we are repairing the world both from our own mishandling of it, but also repairing it from sin, from the fall. That the goal of work of labor is to create a more beautiful and whole world, and that is something that all of humanity is called to share in this in this project of restoring the world to a splendor which it has never experienced.
Amen.
Well said.
I don't even have much I don't have anything to add other than just, like I said, amen.
Amen.